listen to reason? Will you open your eyes? It's a wonder what you'll find with an open mind. You may be surprised. Yeah, gotta get away from this illusion. For the sake of the world, this delusion. It's gotta go.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Atheist Experience. I'm your host, Russell Glasser, and with me today is Don Baker.
Hey, good to be here.
Good. How are you doing?
I'm all right.
Great. Today is Sunday, April 14th, 2013. We are a live call-in public access atheist television show based in Austin, Texas, dedicated to promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. We are also available through live streaming video at ustream.tv. The official Atheist Experience website is www.atheist-experience.com, and you can provide feedback by commenting on the official show blog at freethoughtblogs.com/AXP, or you can email tv@atheist-community.org. If you enjoy this show, you should check out our sister podcast, Godless Bitches. You can find links at the Atheist Experience website. And as always, the cast and crew of the Atheist Experience will be going to dinner after the show at Threadgills at 301 West Riverside Drive. We'll arrive at 6 p.m., and if you want to, you can too, if you're local to Austin. I've got a few extra announcements this week. Next month, Sunday, May 5th, will be the grand opening of the Atheist Community of Austin Library. And so it will also be the big yearly election for a new board of directors. So basically, if you're a member of the Atheist Community of Austin, consider showing up at the new building at 12:15 on May 5th, and then there's going to be an open house that will follow at 1 o'clock, and that's bound to be a lot of fun. You'll be hearing more announcements as the month goes on, and you can always check the calendar on the Atheist Community of Austin webpage, atheist-community.org, to get more updates on where to go. Also, I just want to say that this is the first week that I've gotten to be back on since attending the spectacular 50th anniversary American Atheist Convention.
Yeah, I was there too.
Yeah.
And it was
fun time, huh?
Good convention. It was their 50th, and holy moly, that's a long time.
Yeah.
And it started here in Austin way back when.
That's right, and because it was here in Austin, we got to get most of the people from the Atheist Experience to come up and hang out, and we just have so many fans who love us from around the world.
We had a lot of positive feedback. The Godless Bitches did a live show there.
Yes,
that was
and
great.
I just got word today that there were still cameras and sound equipment recording that episode, even though the convention was technically over at that point. So do stay subscribed to godlessbitches.podbean.com, and you will eventually hear that episode. No promises when, but sooner or later it's going to come up. Also, we got in touch with some cool people, and the plan for next week, I'm going to be substituting for Matt. Jen Peoples is going to be with me, and we're the only two parents who are regulars on the show. And we're going to be doing an interview, assuming everything goes well, with Dale McGowan, the author of Parenting Beyond Belief. So that's coming up next week. And now we'll get to Don.
Good. That's a good special topic. Well, today the special topic, I'm continuing on in the failures of Christianity. I've done 13 shows previously and quite a number of shows before that certainly fall under that category. Today I want to talk about hearing the subtext of the Christian message. Or if you really listen to what they're saying at the sort of subtext level, then it's not quite what they want you to hear. So what is a subtext? Well, it's the message beneath the message. It's often tacit or implicit, unsaid directly. So one example is there's Christians claim that God is love, but then later on you find out that you need to be saved from this God, from being internally tortured by this God, and so what love is there for that, you know? And you have to be saved through blind obedience or blind faith or whatever. So there's a bit of a problem there. So the subtext of the Christian message usually tells a different story than the message itself. The subtext often tells you more because that's really what's going on. And what it says is not usually flattering. And atheists often know what the message is, as we'll see in many of the examples. So this is another example of a failure of Christianity, in that if you cut through the Orwellian doublespeak, you get to learn that Christianity is sometimes without basis or intolerant or thuggish, and those paying attention, like kids today, are staying away from this obvious duplicity. In fact, there was a study done by the Barna group about kids leaving religion, and they had a lot of reasons for doing so, but often it was either the religion was overprotective or closed-minded or sexually judgmental, these sorts of things. Anyway, so I'm going to talk about 5 vignettes, small vignettes. What happens when Christians knock at your door? What's the subtext you hear there? What happens when they talk to recruits like atheists? What happens when they argue with atheists? And what happens church-state separation in schools and helping the poor? So knocking at your door. I've had people come by and knock on my door and try to promote their religion.
I always invite them in.
Do you?
Yeah.
Oh, good for you.
We had Mormons like 3 months ago.
Did you? Okay. How'd it go?
Pretty well, I thought. I mean, they always travel in pairs so that you can't prey on them individually. But
keep each other out of trouble. Huh?
Yeah, we actually, let's see, it must have been right before the election, because we asked how they felt about Mitt Romney, and they said, well, we haven't seen any news because we're not allowed to look at the internet. And I was like, we've got a ton of internet in this house. We won't tell anybody.
Good for you. Well, one of the things that tickles me when they knock on the door is you never, ever see anybody knocking on the door saying, hey, the sky is blue. And the reason is because that's the truth. So what does that say about the message of the folks coming to your door to hawking their religion? Well, maybe it's not so true. Maybe it needs a lot of promotion. And if God really...
Well, to be fair, you could say that about anything that somebody comes on to persuade you about, like atheism.
Well,
I mean, we don't go on TV
we
saying the sky
mostly.
is blue either.
We sow doubts mostly.
Right.
And if God really wants me to know Him, why isn't He at the door? Why isn't He the one knocking? And the answer is that He doesn't exist, or He's not capable. And either way, why worship Him? Atheists don't. So we've sort of got that message already. And I always find it amusing when you kind of get them off their script and they get all flummoxed and they can't answer basic questions, and then they go run off to the neighbors. So I kind of feel sorry for them. They're kind of shills being used to sell their bogus religion and make their minister richer. Well, what about talking to recruits? I've actually had a Christian friend, I'll put that in scare quotes, come to my house and tell me in not so veiled terms that if I didn't believe in Jesus, I would land in hell and be tortured. And I had the opportunity over many months to talk to him about this, and not once did he offer any credible evidence for this claim or any claim of Christianity. But apparently threats is all the religion has to offer. So if you're leading with threats, then that's the best thing you got. You're giving your best argument. And many people, like my friend, think that the religion is good. And here's a case where it's not. It's clearly not. And it reminds me of the Islam, killing apostates. It basically screams that Muslims know their religion has no real merit. Otherwise, people wouldn't have a reason to leave,
right.
or they'd use those reasons.
Dennis Lubay always likes to make the analogy to a mafia shakedown, sort of like, well, that's a nice eternal soul you got there. It'd be a pity if something was to happen to it.
Right. Right. Well, it's the kind of the scheme of breaking your leg to sell you a crutch, right?
Right.
If your soul can be tortured or whatever, then you need some protection from that.
Yeah, I mean, of course, Christians think that this is objectively true, and they're just trying to warn you. But like you said, they can be your friend for months and never offer any reason to believe that other than the threats.
Right, right. So the real good news about Christianity is there is no hell, and there's no reason to pay the con artists that would want you to believe that. Mm-hmm. So you can get around that pretty easily. So I argue with the theists online, and by analogy, theists argue with atheists, and Christians I've found almost always resort to lies or deception, logical fallacies, or emotional manipulation. It usually boils down to some combination of those three things, and when they do that, it effectively tells me, hey, I have no real honest reason to believe this. I have no rational reason, no evidence. I'm just going to make up shit and give this to you. And I usually stop debating at that point. And the reason is that we already know the religion has nothing really there to offer, and you don't have to tell us by using lies and deception and these sorts of things. We already know these things. And so there's nothing more for me to learn, there's nothing more for me to gain at that point.
Right. So, sometimes the deception can be incredibly roundabout. Like I had this long online exchange where I discovered presuppositional apologetics, and
yes.
and the underlying thing there is basically arguing against knowledge.
Yes.
I mean, not
scratcher.
Right? Not even going for, not only not presenting evidence for God, but dismissing the whole idea that you should find out stuff through evidence, just kind of questioning the underpinnings of knowing anything. It reminds me a lot of a Coen Brothers movie called The Man Who Wasn't There, where the guy who plays Monk, Fred something or other, he's a fast-talking lawyer in it, and he rambles on about Heisenberg's uncertainty principle and tries to get a guy off murder charges by saying, well, the evidence all says that he committed the crime, but
could be a coincidence.
But we really don't know anything, and philosophical blah blah blah. And a lot of these God arguments remind me of that.
I had a teacher in high school who said, well, if you can't baffle them with, or you can't dazzle them with genius, yes. Baffle them with bullshit. Right. And I sort of file that presuppositionalist arguments under that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, what about church-state separation in schools? We've had a kind of a rash in the last few years of high school students, heroes of mine, who go and challenge some of the church-state separation violations in their high schools, where there might be religious plaques or paintings or prayer at events, or they might be prohibiting secular clubs from forming. And all of those things are illegal by the U.S. Constitution, and guess what? Students are learning this, and they're standing up for their rights, and I think this is really awesome. So these patriot students are no longer being browbeaten by the powers that be about Christianity, and in many cases, these things have gone all the way to court challenges because the administrators or whatever are obstinate.
As a matter of fact, I have a really relevant news story that I just heard recently. This was posted on April 3rd, and it is the most blatant disregard of the First Amendment I've ever seen.
So here's a hot off the press example.
Republican lawmakers in North Carolina have introduced a bill declaring that the state has the power to establish an official religion. Now, even the Christians who try to mix church and state, who have some sense of shame and would like to make the argument that what they're doing is valid, usually do this by saying, well, the First Amendment only says that the state can't establish an official religion.
Yeah.
And so these guys are actually going ahead and going one step further and saying, by the way, we're setting up an official state religion.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Let me guess, it'll be some Christian thing.
Well, the bill does not specify a religion, but it's North Carolina. Come on.
Okay. So adults are badly behaved too. But getting back to these kids, there's quite a number of them, and a number of them have become atheist advocates, and they've sort of come out of this crucible of persecution, threatened beatings, actual beatings, ostracism, vandalism, threats as strong atheist advocates. And what does it say about Christianity if you have to threaten a young girl with rape in order to break the law and get your religion, your plaque or whatever on some sort of school grounds? It's pretty pathetic, I think. So what we're really finding out is true Christianity. We're really finding out what their morals are about, and it seems that the religion draws up a whole bunch of thugs, and I think it sort of shows the true nature of this. And it's not terribly different than the petulant childlike minds attracted to Islam who are happy to murder over cartoons or some stupid thing like that. So the subtext here is that thuggery is better than being a civil American or having a discourse and actually understanding what the law is about and following the law. So I'm heartened to understand or to learn that these threats and this thuggery isn't working anymore, and either the Christians are going to have to up their ante and actually kill these kids, which will really show the world what they're about, or they're going to have to back down and realize that they don't really have the power of their own convictions. So anyway, I'm glad to see that that's resolving for the better. How about Christians helping the poor? Well, in the Bible, Matthew 19:21, supposedly Jesus tells you to sell all your possessions and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. And I don't know a single Christian who follows that. Live not for tomorrow, these sorts of things, or save not for tomorrow. So when you look at the churches and the number of churches and the vast amounts of land that they have and the giant buildings and well-manicured lawns, there's a lot of wealth tied up in churches, but how much of that is really used for the poor? I mean, it seems like you're stockpiling all this wealth against the words of your supposed savior, the guy you're following. And you're not really helping the poor with this. But when they do help the poor, boy, one of the major goals, you can always find some sort of indoctrination going on, or some sort of blaming the victim. Hey, if you really believed in Jesus, you wouldn't be here, you wouldn't be poor, and here, take some of this Jesus stuff. Anyway, so, and at the same time, we have the Christian movement sabotaging contraception, right? All sorts of measures to giving misinformation about that, sabotaging sex ed,
abstinence only,
right?
Basically discourages condom use because they say it doesn't work.
It doesn't work, or the Pope's saying don't use condoms, these sorts of things, or the taking away the woman's right to abortion. All of this effectively manufactures the poor, which is supposedly at odds with your supposed message of helping the poor. So why exactly are we giving tax breaks to organizations to manufacture the poor people? I haven't quite figured that out. And why do we think this is a public good? So the subtext here is what they're actually doing, or what they really are achieving through their work is something the opposite of what they claim. And so you can call it subtext, you can call it hypocrisy, you can call it irony, I don't know. So what can we learn from all this? Well, we learn from the Christian subtext that their God really doesn't do anything. People find their own car keys. Christians don't really have a good reason for their beliefs, and their marketing isn't working very well. And they're happy to try to sabotage true patriotism through threats, manipulation, and thuggery. And they don't really help the poor so much as indoctrinate them into religion, effectively using them. So none of these messages beneath the messages are particularly flattering, and that's a failure of Christianity.
Okay.
Okay.
Going to calls, I think we're going to start with Corey in St. Louis.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi, Corey.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
All right, I've been watching y'all show for about a couple of years now, and it's really been pretty intriguing.
Good.
I was in class about 2 months ago, and I asked my professor. I said, because we talking about a psychology course, and I said, why does people in religion get a pass for being delusional, where somebody else that believe in unicorns and different things like that, they don't get a pass? And she couldn't respond to that question. She couldn't answer it.
Well, maybe
I like to get y'all thoughts on that. Why doesn't, in psychology books and so forth, the people that write the curriculum don't put people in there that believe in virgin having babies, talking snakes, burning bushes talking to you, people rising from the dead, and invisible people in the clouds? Why they don't put that inside the books of people that have mental illness? They should be a part of people that have mental illness.
I can attempt to answer that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Religion has kind of a special place in our society, and it has a special privilege, especially the majority religion in whatever country you're in. And those folks kind of like to hold on to the power, and so they kind of want to downplay anything that might be embarrassing to them. And you see biases in the news, you see favoritism in government all the time. You see, just as I mentioned in the show today, the kids in various high schools fighting church-state separation things, and we're lucky enough to live in a country where we do have this separation of church and state, and that is a foundational law of our nation, and I think we should do more to try to keep those two separate. But that doesn't address your question exactly of, just the crazy out there. And I think that the answer there is that you have to be willing to sort of speak up about it and call it crazy.
I actually have a different point of view on this, because I take great pains to say that I think religious people are wrong, but I don't think they're crazy by and large. I mean, genuinely, I do not believe that the 85+% of people who live in the United States and maybe smaller amounts in the rest of the world are psychotic in any way.
But you do believe these. You do admit that a lot of these beliefs are just nuts.
I think that a lot of these beliefs would be crazy if taken on their own. But I mean, I think everybody's wrong about a lot of things, and the thought that you put into deciding to believe or not believe something, a lot of different factors go into that thought. And peer pressure is actually a very big part of it. I mean, a lot of these beliefs continue to exist because they have whole cultures surrounding them. And if you lived in, let's say, North Carolina, you might well be the only person that you know who doesn't believe in a personal God. And I'm sure that your psychology professor could tell you that there's a lot of psychological studies that have been done that show just how big the effect is of people believing things because they're pressured into it by lots of other people believing it. And it's sort of self-perpetuating in that way. And I think that beliefs that might be crazy, I mean, let's say that it wasn't Christianity and heaven and talking snakes, but it was like, a Bigfoot or something crazier than that. But I would say that if like 85% or more or 99% of the people around you were telling you that you have to believe this, you wouldn't be crazy to go along with it. You'd just be mistaken.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. It's one more thing I'd like to get y'all thoughts on. I view religion as being racist, male-dominant, divisive. Racist for me being a black male, one of the first ships that came over here in 1555 was called the Good Ship Jesus, and the captain was Sir John Hawkins. And as you know, throughout the Bible, you know, the Pope, they have sanctioned slavery through religion and so forth. Male dominance for, you know, I tell a female that she should never want to believe in a God, because the first thing they say in the Bible, God is a he. You know, so it's already implanted in their mind that, you know, male is the superiority and so forth, and it's divisive because you have all these different religions. I tell people, out of the main three religions, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, it's been the most bloodshed in the world. And I believe if atheism truly penetrate, you know what I'm saying, we all can have a common ground and we would all deal with logic instead of all this divisive fantasy and, you know, you're better than me, my religion's better than yours, because that what ends up being a lot of the bloodshed and a lot of arguments is because of divisiveness in religion.
Yeah, well, that's what we're kind of working for. I was going to have you include sex, you know, or miscegenation or sexism in your laundry list of problems with religion, but
that's why I say male dominant.
Right.
I say male dominant. I said a female should have no business in religion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I agree with you that there's a lot of racism and sexism tied up in a literal reading of the Bible, and I think that a lot of people in general are racist and sexist, and the effect of having a Bible like that is to basically, if you're already inclined in that direction, the Bible says it's okay to think that way because the supernatural, all-knowing creator of the universe also agrees with you. And so, you know, I don't think that the Bible creates that, but I think it helps to entrench it.
Well, the reason why I believe it helped create it, because inside that book, it don't allow you to go beyond that book. I'm saying, you got, if you don't believe in the whole of the book is what the foundation of the so-called facts is. The book. That's the first thing they say. Go to, you know what I'm saying, the book.
Yeah, it probably contributes a lot to it.
Well, one of my frustrations with the Bible is you can, it's often spun for the benefit of the person, you know, wanting to interpret it. They interpret it the way that helps them, and there's a lot of ambiguity and there's a lot of contradictory messages in the Bible, and so you can go and find whatever you want to support your case. Jeff D. calls it the big book of multiple choice. I call it a Rorschach test for the morally challenged. Mm-hmm. But I'm very frustrated by the fact that, you know, everybody interprets it differently, so it's almost meaningless.
Right.
It's a kind of a con game where people, you know, say, well, the Bible says you should give me money or whatever, right? Whatever scam they're working, you know, the Bible supports, right?
Yeah, I just finished playing the new game BioShock Infinite, and of course a lot of people would be angry if I spoiled anything about it. I would say you're out of touch with popular culture, Don.
Probably.
I truly believe that if we all come together as atheists, because we deal with truth and logic, and if we all come together, I think we can be a better combative force against the real evil, which is religion, because it's divisive.
I was just going to say,
we need to come together.
I was just going to say that the plot of BioShock Infinite very largely surrounds a cult formed by this old white guy, and there's a lot of very blatant racism in the story that's implied to come as a direct result of this sort of pseudo-Christian religion that happens in it. It's pretty interesting.
So we agree with you, Corey. We should try to work together more and try to combat this. And you know, one thing individuals can do is, when they see this stuff go on, speak out against it and try to you know, stop it, especially when you have the U.S. law on your side. Yeah,
and you know, for whatever reason, atheism as a movement has a tendency to be predominantly white also. So, I mean, you know, more black voices like yours speaking out in favor of atheism is always good for lending more diversity to the movement.
Yep, more voices.
So keep it up.
Okay.
All right, Corey, thank you.
I appreciate your time.
All right, see ya.
Take care.
All right,
bye. Looks like we had a theist but lost him, but we've got Rachelle in Springfield.
Rachelle, you're on.
Actually, it's Rachelle.
Rachelle,
sorry.
Okay, sorry.
It's okay.
There's ambiguous spelling on the card.
I realize it's a lot like Rachel.
Okay. What's up, Rachelle?
Well, wow, I'm sorry, I'm getting feedback.
Oh,
It's not from the Ustream because I just turned that off.
Oh.
So.
Well,
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
It's a
our
little
crew will
tricky.
our crew will try to address that.
But,
anyway, yeah, go on.
I just want to say that I love the show, and it's helped me a lot with my atheism.
Oh, great.
I was already
Okay.
on the path towards atheism before, but I couldn't bring myself to completely say it until I watched your show a couple of thousand times.
Okay.
Awesome.
Well, it's good to hear that.
And I just want to count this as data point number 11 billion against people who tell us we shouldn't bother doing the show because we'll never change anybody's mind. I mean, I think even if you were kind of a non-believer before and you've become more confident in your atheism, that's a good reason to do shows like this.
I think so too. And I realize you get a lot of calls like this, so I just wanted to keep it short and simple.
Okay. Can you tell us what changed about your thinking specifically and what we said that helped so that we can keep saying it?
Or
Well,
say
I
it
can't
again.
exactly pinpoint one thing down. It's just, in general, I realize people are more like sheep. And most of your calls, like from the creationists and people like that, it's just mind-boggling how people don't even think for themselves.
Well, it's hard work,
Right.
and it's easy to kind of follow along. So you have to sort of roll up your sleeves and be willing to do a little work to make that happen.
Yes, I understand that.
Okay.
All right, is that it?
And most of my family don't realize that I'm an actual atheist.
Okay.
And I realize you get a lot of calls like this too.
Yeah.
But I realize you can't really help with that. But I just figured that since it's a point in my life, you know.
Well, a lot of people struggle with relationships with their family because of their atheism. I don't at all because I'm one of the lucky ones. But I mean, Matt Dillahunty, Jeff D, I think Jen to a much lesser extent.
Tracy
They've
for sure.
all
Crazy.
yeah, they've all gotten in. Had big problems with their family as a result of coming out atheist. And, I wish I had some advice, but it's kind of unavoidable.
I told other people, like all around my college campus, I'm not afraid to tell people. It's my own family that I'm afraid of telling.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand. Well, they're important to you, and the time to come out to your parents is maybe not when you're fresh out or when you finally have made that decision for yourself, because very often those sorts of discussions lead to debate and arguments and these sorts of things, and I think it helps to be a little bit more mature in your atheism before you enter those sorts of discussions, so that you can defend yourself and not get kind of caught up in rhetorical traps or emotional things. And every family is different in the sense that you might have different consequences. I know of people who have been thrown out of their homes for coming out as an atheist. I know, folks that have been disinherited or bad things. I also know folks that the parents have become atheists over time. so it's a bit of a crapshoot as far as what might happen to you, given how little we know about your situation.
Yeah, but I mean, it totally makes sense that you would worry about talking to your parents more than just casual acquaintances at college, because it's a higher stakes relationship, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
what they think of you kind of matters more.
Yeah, and it's
To you.
also as augmented by the fact I'm also bisexual, and they don't know that either.
Oh, well, which one are you going to tell them first? That's the real question.
That would be the problem.
Okay. Well, ironically, a lot of coming out issues are very similar for both.
Yeah, I know.
So,
Right.
but in both cases, keep in mind that you aren't that much different than you used to be. You still love your parents, and they still love you, and these sorts of things. Focus on the things that haven't changed.
Yep.
And that'll be good.
And good luck to you.
Thank you.
All right, Rachelle.
All right. Thanks
care.
for calling. Bye.
Bye.
Dale in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Hey,
Hi.
the reason I was calling, I was looking forward to speaking with one of you folks about deism. I've listened to several of your shows, and unfortunately Matt's not on there today, but I've seen...
Sorry to disappoint you.
Well, it's not a disappointing so much as he was the one who made a few comments about deism, and it, pretty much on the negative side. And
Okay.
as a deist, I would be thinking that, we'd be like kissing cousins or something like that, but it doesn't seem like there's that friendliness.
Well, we agree with deism more than with theism, because theism believes that there's not only a God, but a God who's an active participant in the universe. And I think you and I both agree that that's obviously not true. So we agree on more than theists do, but we also don't agree on that thing that there was a God, or you might say there was probably a God at the beginning who started everything.
Yeah, I don't have a strong argument or beef with deists, because I think the real problem with many religions is this idea of a personal God, or somebody that you can get favors from if only you do something for him, and then it ends up degrading into a kind of a, how can I screw my neighbor to make my God happy so I get my perpetual orgasm in heaven, or whatever you're going to get out of this.
Well,
and
certainly.
And it's a trading thing that I think is very kind of, that's the heart of what's wrong with it.
Well, certainly we agree on that. I mean, who's more powerful, God or the pompous priest that controls God's mood swings?
Right.
So, but there are, the part that I would have contention with you fellows on is that it seems like it's not a definite position that you're taking, unlike what I am. I'm saying that a God exists, or has existed.
I would take exception with that, because I would say, where's your evidence if you're so definite?
Well, where's my evidence? Yeah, that's a...
Yeah,
it's
our position is really, we haven't seen the appropriate evidence to believe in a God.
Well, of course.
And anybody can be certain about things, but, we generally think that you ought to have a reason to believe them, and I think that's where we're going to diverge.
Well, that's true. Normally you would have to have a reason, and we deists sort of pride ourselves in rational thinking. And, of course, it comes back to the old saw. If something exists, then there had to be an origin to it, or an origin to the origin. And as a deist, our people, my deist people, for the longest time, they've been looking for things that would lead them to God. For example, a lightning bolt hits a hill. It kills a bunch of sheep that's on that hill. People says, oh, God was mad at the people that own that sheep, so God did it. All that lightning must have come from God. Well, the deist is out a couple of weeks later, a thunderstorm comes in and hits that same hill. Kills nothing. Nothing was on the hill. And that deist goes, well, obviously God is not doing this. And at that point, he pushes God just a little bit further back.
I noticed when lightning hit Jim Caviezel while he was playing Jesus in Passion of the Christ, nobody lunged to accept the idea that God was mad at Jim Caviezel about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true, but deism is more of a process. We have pushed God back from living up in the mountains, living past the rainbow, living in the clouds, living in space, and now we have pushed him back to the Big Bang.
Sure,
now,
I guess we just push him back a little further than that and just push him out of existence.
we would call that the God of the gaps.
That's where your position gets almost as squirmy as the Christians. Because at one moment you say, I'm an atheist because I see no evidence, and the next moment you're saying, I don't believe.
Well, we see the evidence for God getting smaller and smaller and having to hide under rocks on the other side of the universe because we learn more and more about the universe. And what's the end game for that, right?
Well, maybe the universe, universe is probably not the word that you intended, since at the time the Big Bang was the universe.
No, there's multiple meanings to the word universe. That's the problem when you get into these Big Bang arguments.
Oh, I see.
mean, because a universe mathematically can just mean the set of all things that we're talking about. And while we know pretty well that this universe started at a singularity, at least that's what the mainstream science says, we don't know that the universe, in the terms of the set of everything that exists, was started at the Big Bang. And I mean, in fact, when you use universe in that sense, God, if one existed, would have to be part of the universe.
Yes. Robert Heinlein said God broke himself up into a myriad of parts so that he could have friends. Heinlein went on to say that this is not that rational or reasonable, but it is no more silly than any other religion.
Right, but let me ask you, what do you mean when you say God? What do you imagine as a set of properties that define something as godlike?
I hope not to have my feet held too much to the fire, but to be honest and try to be as straightforward as possible. People and religions and all do evolve. Deism at one point was quite much different, but today a God is like an origin and possibly something that would be difficult for us even to understand. But the Big Bang would certainly be the vicinity of where that origin would be.
Well, if you just want to take the Big Bang and relabel it as God, you can talk me into saying, okay, your God exists. It's just that, I think generally the way the word God is used, people accept it to have some more specific properties like intelligence and intent and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's why the chestnut of the watchmaker that walked away seems to be popular, because it's easier to envision.
Right, but
that.
even calling it a watchmaker has assumptions that sort of make it analogous to humans designing things, and we just don't think that anything like that happened on purpose.
Okay. Well, regarding your atheism, I would like to ask you, do you think that you might have been an atheist if you lived 300 years ago? In other words, what I'm asking you is, has the science enhanced your disbelief?
I think it's helped.
Yeah, I was laughing because I think that if you turn the question around and ask, well, many of the founding fathers were deists. I think that at that time they may not have understood cosmology as well as we do today, and may not have understood evolution as well as we do today, and the need for a creator God has largely disappeared, because we have concrete explanations that are sort of credible and we can demonstrate in these sorts of things. And so I think, to answer your question, I think many of the founders would be atheists in today's world.
Well, and also I would mention Richard Dawkins' quote, I think it is, where he said, evolution doesn't make you be an atheist, but it makes it more possible to be an intellectually fulfilled atheist, more or less.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that without the science, you might not be an atheist, whereas the deist doesn't really require the science. The deist primarily says, "Well, I believe in one God," but when you're talking to a Christian, he says, "But your God is bullshit."
You could say that about anybody who believes things without a good reason. I mean, the creationist would also say we don't need the science. It's just that creationists will continue to actively reject a lot of the science that you might accept. If you want to believe something and just stubbornly hold to it no matter what the evidence shows, I don't think that's something to be proud of.
Right.
Well, I think the point I was making was that there was deists, those people questioning God and pushing him back. long, long before there were atheists. As a matter of fact, I think the word deist came before the word theist. By the way,
Sure. And thanks for laying the groundwork.
yeah, you're
Right.
quite welcome. By the way,
Of course, if you didn't believe in God and most of our history, you'd be roasted at the stake or something. So.
as a self-preservation type thing, I guess, for us too. Maybe it's why we've lasted so long. But the word atheist, I've noticed, theist is a word that is Greek. It means God, from theos, whereas deist from deus, or deus means God, but it's Latin.
Okay.
Both of those words, deist and theist, by the way you break down the words, mean exactly the same thing. But traditionally, now they've been known that the theist has a personal God that interacts.
Yeah,
with
but
deist.
I mean, I always find it a little pedantic to go back and analyze things in terms of whatever the word originally meant. It's what really matters is how most people understand the words to mean now, because the words that you use to describe something just aren't as important as the ideas that you're trying to convey with those words.
Oh, I agree with you so much.
Yeah.
I don't know how many discussions I've had where someone's up against the wall and then all of a sudden, well, how do you define truth? How do you define
Right.
shoe?
That just leads you down a side path of philosophical
A
wankery.
tangent, yeah. Well,
But
guys,
we're
you were about to say something?
Well, we're running out of time on the show, so I think we're
I
going
was
to move
about to
on.
say that same thing. Anyway, thank you very much for talking with me. I appreciate it.
All right,
It's been fun.
it's been a pleasure, and I guess call back when Matt's around.
Okay, thanks.
Take care,
Bye-bye.
Dale.
See ya. All right, Tony in California has been waiting a while. What's on your mind, Tony?
Hey, you know what? I think most atheists are ill-informed. They're unevolved. First of all, I'm an atheist. I'm like a super atheist. I passed all of you. You guys are like
Do you have
way
a
back
cape?
in kindergarten.
Okay, good.
All right.
Well, it teaches
You know
us a
what?
thing or
I really
two.
do believe that you atheists are like still in kindergarten, and I'm like way past you. Basically,
Dazzle
you don't
us with your
understand-
knowledge, Tony.
Basically, you guys don't understand that the belief in God is a psychological immune system in which evolved as a delusion to reduce stress. And it also evolved as a way to enforce the values that evolved from the behavior immune system. And you guys actually embrace high health risk behaviors as an atheist. You guys embrace homosexual behavior. That is a high health risk.
Is this
So why
Charlie
are you
Checkham
an
again?
I'm sorry?
Is this Charlie Checkham again?
I'm not, no comment, because I know
No comment.
Get lost, Charlie. We've had plenty of you. People can check the archives to see what you think. Where are your peer-reviewed papers, Professor? Reid in Charleston, South Carolina.
How you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm 17 years old, from Charleston. Now, I don't claim to know everything, but if I get in a factually based argument with you guys, I'm going to get destroyed. But I do want to hear you guys' opinion because I respect it. I'm a Christian. I do want to hear you guys' opinion on a few subjects.
Okay.
First of all, it's pretty much scientifically accepted that time, space, and matter are finite.
As they exist today, they basically came into existence at the Big Bang, according to mainstream science.
Right. Okay. My question to you is it possible that God can exist outside of the ramifications, time, matter, and space?
Can I take
Does that
this?
justify
Sure,
his
go
existence?
ahead.
What you're presenting is a form of an argument called the argument from ignorance, which basically says if you don't know the answer to a particular question, then my answer works. right? So yes, it is possible that there's a God there, but it's not a proof that there is a God. Do you see what I'm saying?
Right.
So yeah, and this sort of thing has come up a lot. There's a famous quote about a teapot in orbit around Mars, right? We can't necessarily prove it, but that doesn't mean it's there, right? So an atheist is not going to be convinced by an argument from ignorance. You want to have positive evidence for whatever your claim is, and that ain't it.
Right.
So yeah, there may be a God somewhere. There may be a God before the beginning of the universe. There may be a God, under a rock on a planet on the other side of the universe. There may be, who knows, right?
Or it may all have been space aliens who created life on Earth. You could be a Raelian, but I mean, we're not claiming to have certain divine knowledge that this stuff doesn't exist. We're just saying, you don't believe in things until there's a good reason leading you in that direction.
Right.
Right.
So so learning about the logical fallacies is a good thing, so that you can kind of become aware of them and sort of either avoid them or not be taken in by them.
Right. Another question I had: what do you guys believe on the origin of life?
The scientific consensus is that the complexity and diversity of life came about through evolution, and they're currently doing research on the beginning of life, which is called abiogenesis, and there's a couple of theories on that, a couple of experiments that show it might have happened as far as an RNA initial life form. The short answer is we don't know, right?
Right. There are a bunch of different proposed scientific hypotheses which don't rise to the level of theory yet, that explain where first life may have come from. But the problem is that there are so many different possibilities that there's not a good way to choose between them at this point.
Right, and one thing needs to be said, though, is that all of these theories, all these scientific theories or proto-theories are kind of plausible, right? That life might have started this way and through these chemical reactions and these sorts of things, and none of them involve, a God, right? None of them involve magic. And I think that's the takeaway message, is that there are plausible explanations. We don't know the exact answer, but there are plausible explanations for a lot of different ways that life might have been created. Is that fair enough?
Sure, yeah.
You still there? We might have lost him.
You still there? Okay. Sorry.
Sorry. Maybe you got some feedback or something.
I would recommend that I mean, he seemed like a perfectly nice guy.
Yeah.
And I would recommend that before bringing this question to atheists, you should try to really understand the science behind this as it's currently understood. And that means, you can actually start at Wikipedia, because even though it's easily edited by a lot of people, when it comes to discussing what most people believe, it usually converges to a reasonable starting point to educate yourself. So look up abiogenesis on Wikipedia. Also, talkorigins.org, which is a big archive full of basic educational materials about evolution, is a good place to look to see what the current mainstream ideas are about that.
And a good introductory book is Why Evolution is True from Jerry Coyne. That's a pretty good one.
Also, River Out of Eden by Richard Dawkins is a little bit old.
Okay.
Anyway, let's see. We got 5 minutes left, so I guess it's time for me to remind people that we'll be going to Threadgill's next week, or Threadgill's after the show at 6 o'clock on Riverside Drive, and we'd love to see you there. And we're going to go to Karl in Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Hi.
What's up?
Thanks for taking my call. I wanted to ask a question and make a comment. And my question is, I've heard on your show and on numerous YouTube debates where people debate the question, is religion a good or bad thing in the aggregate, on the whole, for society? And what I want to say about that is, how can anyone quantify that question? I mean, how do we know?
Well, you can look at the kill rate of various religions. You can look at how much science has been advanced or depressed by religions. You can look at the living conditions under people. You can look at the health of societies. You can look at all sorts of things and see the effects of religion and whether it's positive or negative.
Well, I realize that religions do a lot of they enforce a lot of backward beliefs that do hurt society, but that doesn't mean that that's all they do. Don't they do a lot of charity work? Isn't there a good side and a bad side?
There's both, and I would say one of the good things about religion is you get a kind of ready-made form of community and a sense of belonging and daycare for your kids and these sorts of things, and those are not small things. There are religions, there are churches that do a lot of good charity work. I'll be the first to admit, but
I mean, we can't look into a parallel universe where no religion exists and say for sure that whether that would be a better or worse universe than this one. I mean, even if we could look at the parallel universe, it's kind of subjective to make a value judgment about it. I mean, I think that on balance, the good things that I see religion doing are more than balanced by the bad things that are brought about as a result of religion. But your mileage may vary. I mean, this is kind of an opinion on both our parts.
Well, I understand what you're saying, and I just want to ask a quick question. When it comes to, for lack of a better word, producing or raising or evolving a person who has a relatively rational outlook on life, like you guys do, what do you think is the greater factor, intelligence or education?
Oh, I don't know if I would pit those against each other. They seem to go hand in hand.
Need both.
So I don't like your question very much. Sorry.
Well,
I mean, who would be better, a super intelligent person who had never been educated, or an incredibly educated person with a super low IQ? I don't know. I favor people being smart and encouraged through education.
Let's have a little of both. Yeah.
Well, there seem to be, for example, some artistic people who are extremely brilliant who believe in things that just are not real at all.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Karl. We're out of time.
Yeah, that's cool.
Thanks for your call. And thanks again. Thanks, Don. It's been
fun
another
today.
great show.
Okay, good.
And we'll see you guys at Thread Gills. Bye. And we'll take some calls.